the gentleman that came up with EM, you know, he was watching how the different microbes, like the different microbes that are in EM, there's lactic acid, yeast, and photosynthetic bacteria. Those normally don't coexist in society, right? You'll find patches where they'll grow in little communities, but they don't grow together. So what he did was he started mixing them together, kind of forcing them to live. And what he did was he came up with these 8 principles that he says are the EM philosophy of how EM works. Right? So it's like he says the microbes themselves will create this community of safety, high quality, coexistence, co-prosperity, exchange of information, sustainability, and it's basically watching how the microbes interact. So in order for them to interact, they have to exchange information, they have to coexist, they co-prosper because there's a synergistic relationship between them. They're all in a state of safety, right? Creating safety as far as they're safe, but then they're also, another definition of safety is feeling calm or not worry of some traumatic event. High quality is that all their byproducts are high quality, and their byproducts are vitamins and amino acids and these other things, bacteriocins and enzymes and all this stuff that actually help beneficial, antioxidants that all help life coexist, right? And then sustainability is that they sustain. Well, they go beyond sustaining; they actually go in regeneration. Right, so then we start looking at what are the other things that you can do. Well, sustainability just means we just keep things the way they are. What the microbes will do is they'll break down everything that's a waste product and make it into a beneficial compound. Right, so they'll actually regenerate. Right.
Succession.
Yeah. Yeah.
Masters of succession.
Yeah. If you look at all these different areas where the products can be used. Right, so let's just say just EM-1, which is like the base of everything from there. So you take this mixed culture, right? Say if you have buildings, apartments, houses. Everybody that's there they're living in an enclosed environment. They're using cleaning products. They're using foods. They produce wastes, right? So we have fecal matter, we have food waste, we have organic matter. People they want to create something like they want to build with concrete, or you want to build with paints and adhesives and all this type of stuff. So let's say we take a city that's in existence and you look at all the different facets you can use this in. We can consume the product, right? It's a probiotic. So you are basically treating the waste before it gets eliminated into the system. Say you got half of the population consuming EM as a probiotic. They're going to eliminate it into their waste. It's going to go into the wastewater, right? When it goes down the drain, say, let's look on this small level. In the drain, you get gunk that gets built up. Roaches eat that gunk. Mice and rats eat roaches. So if you eliminate that food source, the roaches are going to go somewhere else. You're not killing the roaches, but you're getting rid of the roaches' food, and then that stops that chain of mice and rats that are all there growing as well. That happens in the drain in your apartment or in your house. The EM continues to go down to the drain. It cleans up like we have here. In sewer systems, they have a walkway, stuff splashes up here, starts to putrefy, it feeds rats, roaches, all that type of stuff. If you apply it here, you're going to eat up all the waste here. You're not going to attract the pests in the sewer line too. Take that to another level, and instead of just going by and pouring EM down the sewer line and having it clean here, why don't we use it in our cleaning? Because the microbes in the EM eat grease, right? They have it has the enzymes to break down grease, break down proteins. It also starts to break down some of the waste or gunks that are in the drain. So what you do is you clean with it. So you can clean your bathtub. You're going to do it anyway. Why not just switch instead of using an oxidant, which are basically all of your cleaning chemicals are oxidizers, right? They clean using an oxidation reaction. So what they do is they cause corrosion, right? They cause irritation, right? So why don't we just clean with an antioxidant, right? Stop the irritation, stop the corrosion, and start using a probiotic cleaner. What a lot of people do when they get exposed to chemicals over time, they start to develop all kinds of things. Major sensitivities where, I mean, I've met people that they can't take any public transit. They stay in their home the whole time. They can't buy new clothes. So what they do is they use EM. They spray their clothes with EM. They spray the environment that they get in with EM. We get them consuming EM because it'll detox you from the inside out. Right? But you got certain regulations. So like in an airline, they have to use disinfectants. If you go to casinos, they have to use disinfectants because that's the way, one, regulators decide that that's the safest way. It's the most secure way is to sit there and kill. Because there were disinfectants that were starting to, you know, hey, if you use this chemical, it'll kill bacteria. Well, it kills all your beneficials too. Perfect example is MRSA. Right? MRSA, that's the Staphylococcus resistant, methyl resistant. It's a type of staph that was actually created in hospitals from overuse of disinfectants. What happens is, and you know this, anybody that goes to a hospital, usually if they've got some open wound or something like that, they get sick. Usually you hear people get staph infections. Well, what happens is when you sterilize an environment, the first thing that's going to grow is what's there. Well, you got a whole bunch of sick people bringing in bacteria, throwing in these antibiotics, and what happens? They develop a resistance. Right?
Okay, wait.
They mutate. It's the whole process of how you get a mutant bacteria that ends up becoming disinfectant resistant. Right? So what you get is MRSA, which they call superbugs, are created in sterile environments. Right? But if you use nature to attack nature, there's no resistance developed. And that's what a probiotic is all about. It's not about an antibiotic, it's about a probiotic. You get a balance going where you have more and more beneficial microbes. They secrete compounds where the pathogens don't survive. Right? So that's like if you go into a heavily antioxidant area, there's a lot of vitamins, there's a lot of trace minerals. Pathogenic bacteria don't thrive. They'll be there, but they don't thrive. So you've got this balance going on. Right? Normally when we go in and we disinfect, we're killing both, right? Some of both, and the ones that are the opportunistic ones are usually the pathogens. They start to grow faster than the beneficials do because we keep putting more and more antibiotics in. The beneficial bacteria are weaker, right? So they die faster. So what happens? Your pathogens grow, they mutate, they develop this resistance. This happens in soils. That's why pesticides don't continue to work. My wife's a nurse, and I've seen when they do an assessment, a patient assessment, they're taking this because they have this. Well, then they're taking 10 other things to, counteract the reactions, the side reactions of each one of these, previous chemicals that they're taking, and what ends up happening? The person's not really getting any better. It's really science. If you look at the way that scientists think, is they have to isolate everything. So they try to isolate. This is one of the things that gets really frustrating dealing with EM. Scientists want to always get peer-reviewed research on EM. It's got 30 different species of microbes in it that interact with each other and interact with other microbes out in the environment. You can't isolate it. And if you look at research studies, they're usually, give you an example, you look at things that are always out there in agriculture, no one is analyzing the microbes. Unless they're doing a microbial study, but yet they're trying to look at the crop production. Like, look over here. I mean, you're over here. You have someone doing research, and they're going to study, how does this chemical work on this plant? There's no analysis of the microbes in that study. They're not analyzing that the microbes actually make those nutrients available to the plant, or the enzymes, or the other byproducts that are shot out. It's not accounted for in most of this research. And there's really, it would take an incredible team to sit there and look at, okay, what are these 30 different species doing with the other 1,000 that are in the soil? How are they interacting? Right? And then we've got all our inputs too. So we're going to have a nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then we're going to have a micronutrient out there. How is this all working also with the organic matter? Science can't sit there and look at this whole picture. So they say, we want to know what the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are doing to our plants. You look at a microbiology textbook, and you tell me how much is dedicated towards anything to do with beneficial bacteria.
Yeah, just give me attention.
They'll mention it. You'll see a little blip. There's nothing in there about fermented foods. When you go into a nutrition course, Talk to a nutritionist that's gone through school recently. There's nothing in there about fermented foods. Every culture has fermented foods. Every culture has raw foods. Every one of them. But of course you have the SAD diet, standard American diet, and how many fermented foods, how many raw foods are in it? If we are trying to develop a society, we want a fermented society, if you will, you're going to have green spaces, you're going to have areas just like this city. I mean, you could turn around and clean up this city by cleaning up the city with a probiotic approach. So say you go into the subway, you go down to those subway stations, they're covered with grease, they reek. You look at the tracks. Well, yeah, there's urine, there's rats feeding on the rotting food down there, there's roaches down there. You've got tracks that are all loaded with creosote, right? You've got grease from the trains coming through, you've got dirt from people, you've got germs from people. Okay, what's the way to deal with it? You go through and you hose it. You pressure wash it first, and then you just hose it down weekly.
But you have to keep doing that because it's
weekly. It's just a maintenance thing.
Oh, maintenance.
Right now they wash down with water in the streets. Why don't you add some of the microbes in there that'll digest the grease, like running off from the restaurants? I mean, I've seen some restaurants, they just roll up their door, they bring out the hose, and they just spray down. Screw on a hose end sprayer, same thing you use for a garden, put a little EM in there. See, you go in there, you add EM to your soap. Okay, so you need some soap to break down the grease right away, but then the microbes digest it all. So what you do is you add some EM to your dish soap, you add some EM to your laundry soap, you add some EM to your hand soap. You spray some on your salad. Wash those tables. We were talking about the tables, Instead of using Windex, why don't you just use some little EM and water?
Yeah.
There's restaurants that do this in the country right now. You could also fog, when people have misters out. You could mix a little EM into that and it'll fog out the EM. Dr. Higa was looking at that and just saying, that's why he called it the EM philosophy. He's like, we need to take this EM philosophy and we need to be like the microbes. That's what he's saying. If we could all coexist like the microbes, right? We'd coexist, we'd co-prosper. That's where you get there's groups out there. One that I went to, it's a business incubator, right? And it's called CEO Space. And what they do is that they get everybody to just say, instead of saying me, 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 you offer. So you say, what do you do? What do you need next?
Like Figment and Burning Man. What do you have to bring?
Yeah. So you're giving. So you have to give to receive.
Yeah. That's
one of those coexist, co-prospers, right? It's there. Well, in those water books, they talk about EM. So Dr. Emoto teaches this about what you give. If you put off a bad vibration, you're going to make something bad happen. Right? And it's about that, like the microbes. You got to put out good feelings, and what'll happen is good will come back. Right? So you don't want to sit there and when you read this, it's comes down to it's kind of this whole frequency thing, frequency, vibration, that type of stuff. I mean, we look at it on how EM works. One of the reasons it works is this ultrasonic frequency that it emits. Ultrasonic frequencies suppress the growth of pathogens too.